Hey, Shal, great to see you this evening.
Hi, Alan. It's great to be here.
Hey, I am Alan Lazo, the Executive Director at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
And I'm Shaila Reuter. I'm the Education Outreach Director at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
And welcome to everyone who has joined us here this evening for our second annual mission-centered fundraising event. Our theme this year is It's Fun Having All Kinds of Neighbors. Shail, I'm really looking forward to an engaging evening. So thanks to you and to everyone that has joined us here and connected with us this evening.
We are so excited for this event and all of the things that we have to share.
As you saw in our opening slides, we recognize that all of us live on the lands of Indigenous peoples. We humbly acknowledge that the Portland metropolitan area, where we're coming to you from this evening, rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, and Clackamas bands of the Chinook, Tuolumne, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who have made their homes here along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Today, Portland's diverse and vibrant Native communities are 70,000 strong, descended from more than 380 tribes, both local and distant. We take this opportunity to offer respectful recognition to the Native communities in our region today and to those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. It's been quite a year for all of us, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the calls for racial justice in our streets to the devastating wildfires throughout our state. We've been challenged to find ways to maintain our connections during a year that literally has kept us apart. As the events of this past year have highlighted enduring inequities, we know that supporting the fair housing movement is one of our hopeful pathways forward. That's why we celebrate Fair Housing Month throughout April. The Federal Fair Housing Act was signed into law more than 53 years ago on April 11th, 1968, a week after the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King had been instrumental in the open housing movement, and his work and the subsequent passage of the Fair Housing Act marked the beginning, but not the end, of our connecting to promoting justice, equity, and inclusion in housing throughout Oregon. We're grateful to have you here with us this evening to support our work. And this evening, we're going to hear from many of our partners about why fair housing is important to them and how they got connected to the fair housing movement. Up first is our own FHCO board member, Freddie Lunt from Princeton Property Management, our fair housing visionary sponsor this year. Freddie recognizes the enduring work it takes to address discrimination against families with children.
Good day. I'm Freddie Lunt, and I moved to Oregon in 1975. I was refused housing because I was a single parent, which I was told by the potential landlord clearly meant that I would not have a way to keep the yard looking nice. At that time, there was no Fair Housing Council, and even if there had been, I'm quite sure I would not know how to access it. In 2021, 46 years later, as a board member, it was brought to my attention that there was a landlord in town who refused to show a property to a single mom because how could she ever keep the lawn looking good? So I have to ask myself, if a single white mom can be discriminated against today in Portland on the basis of lawn care, what other protected classes continue to hit the fairness wall? I believe we all know the answer to that question, which is why we are all here today. But now we do have a council. We do have advocates for all people. We do have outreach and great education. With everyone's support, we have the real ability to positively impact any housing discrimination taking place in our state today. My colleagues and I take great pleasure in supporting the Fair Housing Council of Oregon because we believe that every educated landlord and resident brings our state, Oregon, closer to the state we truly want to live in. Thanks very much for coming today.
Thank you so much, Freddie, for sharing your story and your connection to fair housing. The work that the Fair Housing Council of Oregon does in the community is so important in promoting housing justice, equity, and inclusion throughout Oregon. We also want to make sure that we take a moment to thank all of our sponsors here this evening. At the Fair Housing Partner level, we have the Portland Housing Bureau, our Fair Housing Advocate supporters, our regional multiple listing services, the folks at RMLS, the City of Corvallis, the City of Gresham, and our friends and partners at Kell Alterman and Runstein LLP, and our wonderful supporters from Kaiser Permanente.
And we also want to thank those who sponsored us at the Fair Housing Champion level. That's Dalton Management, Tomasi Saylor Martin, City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, Housing Development Center, City of Hillsborough, Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt, PC, CASA of Oregon, Home Forward, Salem Housing Authority, Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors, and Multnomah County. And at the Friend of Fair Housing level, Background Investigation. Our media sponsor is The Oregonian, and DocuMart is our print sponsor. We also have received exciting news that our visionary sponsor, Princeton Property Management, will match all donations of $250 up to the first 10 who donate $250. If you would like to donate in that amount or any other amount, you can text FUN21 to 44321 or visit our website, fhco.org, to donate. I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Tammy Kaufman is not only the mayor of Gold Beach, Oregon, but she is also a property manager, and she is also a reformed fair housing naysayer. I give you Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Kaufman, and I'm the mayor of Gold Beach. I also happen to be a property manager by trade. I was introduced to fair housing around 1992 when I became a licensed real estate professional, and I also sold manufactured homes. The lesson that I recall learning was that fair housing was stupid, at least that was my interpretation. A couple years later, the Newspapers Association schooled the publishers on how to avoid inappropriate words so they would not be liable. That required a lot of time between my ad rep and I working on ad copy and making sure we didn't use any of the red and yellow words. This unfortunately verified my wrongful concept that fair housing was dumb and we just had to do it anyway. In my spare time, I was also on the City Planning Commission and I served as a city councilor. Not at the same time. I learned about local government and how it operates hands-on, and what it means to have neighbors that do not want to have development next door. I got out of housing for a few years, and then I became a licensed property manager in 2008. And again, I was trained on fair housing. Within a couple years, I made the connection of why fair housing laws exist and how to actually apply the principles. The light bulb moment for me was when I read an article around 2009, and there was a study done in the Beaverton, Oregon area rental market, which is a pretty progressive area at the time. And they found a 40% rate of discrimination against gay and lesbian applicants. That puzzled me because I could not connect the reason a landlord would say no to someone just because they were gay. I was very conservative at the time. I live in a conservative area, but I would not have used that as a reason to deny housing. From this, I was able to begin to connect why laws were passed and who was protected as a result. This newfound interest in fair housing reminded me that when my sister lived in the Portland area in the late 1980s, where she lived, if you got pregnant, you had to move out. The apartment complex simply did not allow children, and that was legal. In 1988, the law changed, and at that time, 70% of the units were off limits to children with families. This made me connect that if my niece and nephew had been born at that time, my sister would not have had a place to live. From a city standpoint, I learned about gentrification and how that can be a fair housing violation. When lawmakers are changing laws, especially planning and zoning, we have to be conscientious about the unintended consequences that could happen predominantly to minorities. Small towns are less likely to get into those kind of issues, but we still need to be aware. Now that I'm older and have a fancy title that gains me respect I may or may not deserve, I realize that laws do matter, and good laws protect good people from bad decisions from people in power.
Thank you, Tammy, so much for sharing your story and sharing about how your connection with your sister helped you to understand the importance of fair housing law. We hear stories like this often when we are out in the community. How can you help others to create these connections? Well, one way is to support the important work that we do by donating. You can text to donate. You want to text FUN21 to 44321, or you can also visit our website, fhco.org. Now, I have a special announcement. We have our 2021 Fair Housing Poster Contest winner, Annalise DuPont, a fourth grader from Beverly Cleary Elementary School, entered in this piece of artwork. It's entitled, "It's Fun Having All Kinds of Neighbors." Annalise, thank you so much for your creativity and your thoughtfulness and your entry for our 2021 Fair Housing Poster Competition. Our next presenters are Bianca and Lycan from a partner organization in Southern Oregon called Native Women Share. They both share about how they build connection to community through connection to the earth.
Hi, I'm Lycan Koss. I'm a co-founder of Native Women Share. I'm going to tell you why fair housing is important to me. As a child of an immigrant coming to this country and being first born in this country, my parents had to move a lot. Sometimes the housing was subpar and we never knew or had the security that we'd be living in the same place month to month. I'd like to introduce you to my co-founder,
Bianca Baeta, also co-founder of Native Women Share. And fair housing issues are important to me because being the child of refugee immigrants, we also moved every 1 or 2 years just in search of affordable rentals. And we're here to introduce you to Native Women Share. Native Women Share is our response to Indigenous and POC needs for fair and culturally relevant housing in Southern Oregon. Native Women Share is an Indigenous, Black, and POC land project held by women and Two-Spirit for community healing, land healing, art, and culture. Originally named Woman Share, this 23-acre land project has held safe haven for lesbians in the woods of Southern Oregon since the 1970s. Now this land on ancestral Takelma territory is evolving into a matriarchal space. that reinvites the original Indigenous mother stewards, Black and Brown women, and Two-Spirit people to thrive and reclaim our land-based culture. Together, the previous Women Share stewards and us incoming Indigenous stewards see this as a chance for beauty, justice, and reparations in action. According to a study by the USDA called Who Owns the Land, 98% of the land in the US is owned by white people. In contrast to this, 83% of the people working the land are Black and Brown farm workers. And we know historically that the land has been worked but not owned by Black, Brown, and people of color for too long. Immediately you see how people of color are very connected to the earth and yet barred from owning it, or living on it. Even within the LGBTQ plus community, Black and Brown people experience levels of marginalization to this day. That's why Native Women Share is our new and evolving project born of the urgency placed on Native, Black, and Brown women and queers for community housing, for connection to land, for belonging, and for the stewardship that our ancestral ways offer the health of our ecosystem. Last year, we were immediately catapulted into offering emergency housing and essential goods to minority community in the area and also to undocumented people dealing with the wildfire emergencies. This year, we are adding a food sovereignty garden featuring native foods and medicines from the land, and we'll be offering free weekly baskets of food to local community. Next year and beyond, we hope to be opening the land for Indigenous-led workshops, much needed BIPOC and Two-Spirit space, gathering space, and for bringing awareness to the cause of fair housing for BIPOC, Two-Spirit, and undocumented peoples in the rural Rogue Valley and surrounding counties. Thank you to the Fair Housing Council of Oregon for supporting us in this important work.
Thank you, Native Women Share. We feel so fortunate to be connected to your organization and so many other organizations throughout the state doing such important work. We also feel very, very thankful that each one of you is here tonight, tuning in, learning a bit more about the important work that we do in the community. We do hope that you will consider donating to this work. You can do that by texting FUND21 to 44321, or you can go to our website, fhco.org. And remember, Princeton Property Management, our visionary sponsor, will match the first 10 donations of $250. Now, the next video that we're going to watch is very near and dear to the hearts of those of us who have worked at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon and still work there. Leroy Patent has been our board president for over 30 years and has recently transitioned to be our president emeritus. Leroy is our connection to our roots and our past. We hope you enjoy this video and help us celebrate all that he has done to proactively promote housing justice, equity, and inclusion throughout the entire state of Oregon. Thank you so much, Leroy.
Forever in my life, we have tried to have Black Lives Matter. Without saying it, we've worked on having it. It's just been this last Black Lives Matter collection that has made a difference. And it's only made a difference because of the number of people that are marching. In the 60s, Martin Luther King went all over the country. I'm sure he changed a lot of minds. Most conversations need to start with purpose. What's the purpose? I decided as a kid I didn't want to be in the slums and I didn't want to be in the crime. I didn't want to be around people that were like that. So I excused myself from those environments and purposely found myself, propelled myself into areas that made sense to me. So as I grew up, I purposely focus my life on who I could help. I was born in Chicago and grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I left Kansas City as a 16-year-old to find a better place to live, and I came to Portland, Oregon. All around me, everybody I knew was going to college and finishing high school. I didn't finish high school, so I had no idea about going on with anything. I could see the use and the need for education, but I wasn't in a position to do anything about it. While I was in the Army, I got my GED, and I decided I needed to go on to get more education. So I went to the University of Portland, got a bachelor's in music, and I think from then on my life became a hippity-hop, busy, busy, busy. I was an educator for over 30 years in Portland Public Schools. I co-founded the Fair Housing Council 30 years ago with Phil Yates. The Fair Housing Council is a nonprofit organization for fair and equitable housing that addresses issues of desegregation, civil rights violations, economic issues that confront people renting, buying, or negotiating any kind of property. If we weren't there, there would be no one to do this work. We have to change the bigger thing, the laws, the standards, and what makes things livable. So you ask, what can we do? Make all areas of a community livable and viable. And that's an unending job until it's done. I hope I'm remembered as a person that was involved. My legacy is work. My legacy is influencing people and getting concepts into people's minds that will help them not only to change, but to see the value in the change. I'm here to be helpful. We're further ahead than we have been. I'm hopeful, yes, and I'm positive. Even when Martin Luther King was marching, we didn't have crowds like we've got now. That means that many more people have been influenced for doing better, for change. That's what makes me hopeful. I even go in different suburban neighborhoods now and see signs in people's yards, Black Lives Matter. That tells me something. I'm hopeful that things are going to continue to improve until we reach the goal.
Hello everyone, my name is Tomas Hernandez. I am the new board president of FHCO. I want to thank everyone here for their continued support of FHCO and its mission to end housing discrimination through access to enforcement and education. I want to give a special thank you to Leroy Patton. Leroy is a co-founder of FHCO and served as board president since 1990. Leroy and I share a few things in common. We both grew up in tough neighborhoods where gangs were prevalent, and we both decided at a young age to leave those neighborhoods and seek a better life. We're both military veterans and decided to make Oregon our home. One of the many things that impressed me about Leroy is his tenacity. When he experienced discrimination in Oregon, he didn't accept the status quo. Instead, he created what's now a statewide organization with a staff 100% committed to its mission to end discrimination. I don't know what the early days of FHCO were like, or whether he thought it would still be around 31 years later and going strong. I do know that our mission is not yet accomplished. So long as discrimination exists, we will continue the struggle. We will be purposeful in everything we do. We will never forget that our connection to the past will guide and inform us on our future. I can never fill Leroy's shoes. He is truly one of a kind, and he set the bar high. What I am committed to do is continue what he started. We will continue to grow and use every tool at our disposal to end housing discrimination. We will engage in policy making, education, and enforcement. We will continue to have tough conversations with those in our community and keep moving the ball forward. We will be around for another 31 years and another 31 years after that if that's what it takes. Thank you all again, and Leroy, thank you for mentoring me and trusting me with FHCO.
It is such an honor to have had Leroy lead our organization for so many years and for continuing to connect our organization's past, present, and future. We're looking forward to Tomas's leadership today. Thank you all for being here and being a part of such an inspiring evening with us and the opportunity to hear from our partners throughout the state. I'm hopeful that each of you has been moved to action this evening. Please join us in our work to ensure, as Leroy implores us in his video, that every community becomes a community connected to opportunity and rooted in inclusion. You can work to support local, state, and federal legislation that includes more housing and more housing types in every neighborhood so that we can create opportunity for everyone. You can connect with your friends and colleagues and make sure they understand the important history of fair housing and that history's connection to enduring inequities today. With that understanding, you can help end those inequities through your support. If you are experiencing discrimination in housing, you can reach out to our statewide hotline and connect with one of our intake specialists. And before we end this evening, I have to extend a heartfelt and wonderful thank you to our dedicated and passionate staff at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Thank you all for the hard work and dedication that you bring to this work. And particularly to our development coordinator, Eleanor Doyle, who has had to pivot over the last 2 years, the first 2 years of this event, into this virtual format. And so we are grateful for her, the work that she's done on this, and for all of you joining us this evening.
She's really done a wonderful job, and we have more people to thank as well. We want to thank all of our speakers who shared their stories tonight. We also want to thank our sponsors again. We want to thank all of you who have donated. We also want to remind you that Princeton Property Management has agreed to match donations, the first 10 who donate $250. So please consider donating if you have not already. You can text FUN21 to 44321 or visit our website at fhco.org. Thank you everybody so much for being here and helping make this event a success.